Hello, and welcome back to the Thursday Night Kissaten podcast. Thursday Night Kissaten is a podcast that we talk about Japanese TV shows, movies, books, and other pop cultures. We update weekly every Thursday night around 5 p.m. This podcast is written and hosted by me, Cordelia.
Hello, my dear listeners. How are you doing? You know what? A lot of people just told me that the first 2 weeks back to work is just so busy. I'm the same. There's one project which is driving me crazy right now, and I haven't getting enough sleeps at all this week. So my voice may sound a little bit weird, but it's time of the season. As I promised that in the several episodes before that, we're going to talk about more about the Asadola and also the Taiga dramas that's in the history or coming up. So in this episode, we're actually going to touch on the one Taiga drama was aired last year with a female main characters involved. Hikaru, Kimi, which is the 63rd work of the NHK Taiga drama that is actually the life of Shikibu, who is a Japanese female writer, wrote the first ever novel in the history, The Tale of Kenji Monogatari, The Tale of Kenji. And the story is actually set in the mid-Heian period. We'll dive into this, but in this episode of part 1, we're only going to talk about a little bit. We'll touch on the background, what is this novel is, and what it meant to the Japanese literary history. So last year, NHK had this very amazing, beautiful, and a huge production, as we mentioned about Taiga drama, is focusing on this just legendary Japanese female writer, Murasaki Ichigo. That she actually was lived. People were thinking that she might lived during the Heian period. From the BC 937 to 1014. This is not actually really being 100% sure. The Tale of Kenji actually, is already 1,000 years old book. So it's actually a nickname. Still, a lot of people don't really know the original name of it. The reason why is actually this book has in total 54 chapters. So the people were thinking, a lot of scholars were studying about this. This is actually a novel being written for the emperor and emperor's wife to entertain them, or is emperor's wife's father hired this writer to write this in the court, therefore to attract the emperor to visit his wife a little bit more, and then able to have more life together and to have babies and to pass on the heir. So in total of this book, 54 chapters is actually about 3 generation story, not just about Kenji himself, not just about the Hikaru Kimi, this person himself. It's also about his son and his grandchildren's stories. So it's actually a huge work. A lot of adaptation that we have been watched, like say the movie and also the TV shows, are only actually focused on Kenji, his Hikaru no Kimi, his own life. But I really did not mention about his son and his grandchildren. So here's the thing, why this is the first novel that in Japanese history and written by a female writer. I won't tell you everything that you can search on the internet, but this is something that I learned when I was actually visit 2 years ago, and in the temple heard from one of the monk there. They were giving this kind of like mini lectures. It was because of this MFP production was going to air soon, and then everyone was just visiting the historical set in Kyoto, and to learn more about the Kenji Monogatari. So here's the thing. The reason why this is the first novel was because during the Heian period, Buddhism traveled from China to Japan. So it was actually, let's say this, it's actually from India. It traveled through the Silk Road to China, and the monks that in China actually traveled, they traveled with the boat and to Japan, and then the Buddhism was actually being very popular in Japan during the Heian period. And because it was also heavily promoted by the royals, Japan had their own, original native religions, which is the Shindo. Shindo is very much connected with the royal family. I think because the royal family is part of the native god, therefore, they're eligible to have the land. So however, because of the Buddhism's actually teaching their people to be more kind and listen and obey, so in a way being actually politicalized. So novel, something is like a fiction, unrealistic stories are not being considered as being honored. It's not being truthful. And the value it has cannot be compared to the Chinese style poetries, or let's say tanka. Okay, listeners, you may have the question here again, why I'm talking about China. So here is a huge influence that between China and Japan, especially the Chinese culture. I'm not thinking about China, this country itself, but the culture was being regent 5,000 years old. In the past, Japan actually only had a spoken language. They did not have any written language system. Until that, there was a little war that happened between China and Japan. Japan tried to invest the big land during the Tang Dynasty period, and they learned there's actually a huge country, and then all of a sudden they had interest in this big country in huge land. Then they start sending students to the Tang Dynasty China and to learn. And they realized that this Tang Dynasty, this country, China, Tang, not only had a very, very well system political system, military system, they also have a very finalized or very mature system of written language and also speaking language. Therefore, Japan took the Chinese characters and used their own way to pronounce it and produce their own written system. So therefore, their literary was hugely influenced by the Chinese style. That's the reason why that Chinese style poetry, only talking about the nature, the present, the humanity, was heavily being valued in the royal circle, not the novel. The novels are being lie is not a good quality, being a human being, therefore is not being promoted by a lot of royal families. So it was actually a huge risk for Kissaten to actually create a novel. Something is, especially this very long form of novel that Kenji Monogatari, which is, have the 54 chapters full of untrue lies that against the value at that current time. And as we talked about the paper, okay, if we time travel to Heian time period, paper was extremely pricey and hard to get in the Heian time period Japan. Paper making was invited in China during, yes, again, China had the paper making process, and it was actually documented during the Eastern Han time period. That was 25 to 220 AD. And then it was invited by a court official named Cai Lun. So therefore, at the Heian time period, Japan did not have a huge manufacturing system for paper making and processing. And then the paper, therefore, still need to have the trade import from China. And, that time during the Heian period was equal to China's Tang and Song dynasty. And because it's only import and very hard to get, only few manufacturers can make it, only the court officials and royal families are allowed to use paper to write. So, that time paper is extremely expensive and is even not allowed to being sold in the market. So therefore, a lot of researchers was 100% sure, well not 100%, almost 100% sure that, the Kinjimono Kadali is definitely was the writer Kishibu, that she was hired by the court and given the paper to write, because in total for 54 chapters, it may cost 2,000 pieces of papers. If she actually had the paper herself, and then she must came from a super duper rich family and with a super high hierarchy in the royal family tier, but she was not. So there was definitely the time that people believed that she was being hired and given the paper that she can actually finish this wonderful work. And I remember I went to this temple that actually in Kyoto, they actually kept the oldest hand copied copy of the Kinjimono Kadali, and then it was actually cut into the small square pieces, and it was being written back and it was being written very neat small font. So paper is really, it was something huge. So each chapter actually may take 507 papers. That's what they recorded. Anyway, it was a huge amount of the paper. And when the researchers, when they explained about this, they said, when we're looking at the paper, we're actually looking at the money. This is how much we think that she spent on this, and she was being gifted this wonderful opportunities and tools and equipment to finish this work for the royal family, and it was such an honor. And I know that in this episode we only want to talk a little bit about a fun fact of this book. Kinjimono Kadali is the book of this Kenji, this person. People doesn't know his name, only know that because he's so good looking, and people call him Hikaru no Kimi, the one who carried the lights. He was so charming, and he is, if we use current words, this is a royal romantic story that someone just had a lot of wives and girlfriends, and all about the things between romance, and between male and females. It got very popular because for many reasons, as I explained. But the reason people are still watching and looking at this today was because we are actually looking for a new nuance and new perspective of this ancient 1,000 years old novel. So in this adaptation at NHK's production last year, Taiga Dolama, they actually given Shikibu a name. According to the record, that people still don't know her first name. We only know that her first name, Fujiwara, which is at that time the biggest aristocrat family name. Again, as we mentioned, that the Taiga drama sometimes is not all about the truth of the stories. There are a lot of fictional things behind it. Especially in this production they had last year. I will give just a little bit away, and we'll talk more in the next episode. That the highlight thing is the relationship this writer that she had with the person who hired her to write the story. According to the historical research, that she has been, harassed by this person for a very long time. A male, of course, is a male in the center of the power at that time. So, but however, in this adaptation, the writer of the show really extremely romanticized the relationship between those two. However, we still need to know that the power game that was being played within between. Overall, before we head into the next episode next week, I have to say I do really like this production, even though they romanticize the relationship too much. I think I like it for several reasons. First is because this is it's about a female writer's life. Right. Second, I just love the Heian time period. I like their clothes. I like the effort that they're put into train and to make the productions. And also, I love to see this whole relationship this writer had with herself, her own life, and how she actually projected or not projected, play in a very smart way to written that into a novel. There's so much to talk about in the next 2 episodes about this wonderful Taiga drama. I actually watched this from the first episode to the last one. I did not even skip a single episode. It was so weird that happened to me. We'll talk more, and before we head into the next week, if you listen this, I really hope that you can find the source to actually watch this production. And if you give a try of this book as well. It's a wonderful romantic story with a wonderful, beautiful written. And I know that have been translated into English several times. It was not hard to find. So until then, we will talk next week. And I hope you have a good night. Thank you.